A real artist doesn't start with a blank canvas because they have to make the canvas first. Hello and welcome to another Highline Guitars guitar building video. In this episode I'm going to be covering part 3 of my Delta guitar build, and that's the guitar where I'm going to be combining the features of a headless guitar with a traditional guitar that has a headstock. And what I'm going to be doing specifically is I'm going to be preparing the body blank. And then at the end of this video, I'm going to lay out all the different pieces of wood that I'm going to use to make the fretboard, the neck, and the body itself. So let's jump in and get started. The wood that I'm going to be using for the top of this guitar is called Chechen. And I have a fairly long board here, so what I need to do is cut it to the length of my blank, which is going to be 18 inches. After cutting the top to the desired length of 18 inches, I had to cut it to the desired width, which in this case is going to be 7 inches. The top of this guitar is going to be cut from this one piece of wood that I'm preparing right now. I'll be using a technique known as book matching for this top, which means I'm going to resaw this board on my bandsaw. And what that will do is it's going to produce two pieces which will open up like a book, as you'll see here in a minute. And by doing that, the grain on one side of the glue seam will mirror the grain on the other. And to book match it, what I'm doing is I'm resawing on my bandsaw using a 1/4 inch wide blade and then a carpenter speed square to keep the blank parallel to the blade as I carefully guide it through. And this is what they mean by a book match top. The base of the body blank is going to be made from Philippine mahogany, and I had cut 2 pieces for the blank a while back when I first processed the lumber. This is a nice wood in that it looks a lot like mahogany and it's a little bit lighter in color. So I have some freedom when it comes to finishing the wood, you know, if I wanted to do a tinted dye stain or that sort of thing. But what I need to do first is to cut it to the correct width, and in this case each side of the blank is going to be 7 inches wide. So what I'll do is I'll take it over to my table saw and I'll cut it to that width. And the pieces that I cut off I'm going to use later on as pieces that I can attach to the side of the blank, which will allow me to clamp the blank to my CNC machine so that the clamps are actually below the surface and out of the way of the CNC carving operation. You'll see what I mean here in a minute. So what I end up with is 2 bottom pieces and then 2 top pieces that will be glued together to form the blank. Before I can glue the 4 pieces of wood together, I need to run the pieces through the plane to make sure that all the surfaces are absolutely flat. And that's what I'm doing here with the top. I'm also planing it down to a final thickness, which is about 3/8 of an inch thick. Next, I'll plane the Philippine mahogany until it has a thickness of about 1 5/8 inches thick. Now before I can glue the Chechen top to the Philippine mahogany bottom, I'm going to drill some pilot holes in the 4 corners so I can use screws to help line up the 2 pieces as well as to hold them together while I prepare to clamp the 2 pieces after applying the glue. And speaking of glue, I'm using Titebond Original wood glue to glue the 2 pieces together. And what I'll do is I'll tighten the wood screws which will hold the pieces together as I prepare to clamp them. My method for clamping the top to the bottom of the body blanks is kind of unusual, but it works really well. What I'll do is I'll place the tops together, and then I'll set the blank into my workmate bench, and I will tighten it so that it's applying even clamping pressure along the center of both blanks at the same time. Then I'll apply some ratchet style bar clamps to both this top edge as well as the bottom edge, which you can't really see in this video, but if you look closely you'll see that I've got 4 clamps along the top and then 4 clamps along the bottom. So this gives really even and consistent pressure. After about 6 hours, I'll remove the clamps and then run the gluing edge of the blanks over the blades of my joiner to square up those edges and make them as perfect as possible before I glue the 2 sides together. To glue the 2 halves of my body blank together, I'm using 4-way pressure clamps, and these come as a kit. I'll put a link in the description below of where you can purchase them. But they work really great for gluing body blanks together because they apply clamping pressure from the sides as well as from the top and the bottom to keep the blank perfectly flat. And then once I've applied the clamping pressure, I'll let it sit overnight, 6 to 8 hours to let the glue fully dry and cure. Now, since my benchtop planer isn't wide enough to accommodate a blank of this size, I'm using my CNC machine and a very large surfacing bit to plane it down. Then I'll flip over the blank and I'll do the other side. And if you look closely, you can see the strips of wood that I attached to the side of the blank in order to allow me to clamp the blank without the clamps getting in the way of the carving operations that are going to take place on the top and the back. If you're enjoying this video, I would encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, and share the video. That always helps this channel to grow. If you'd like to do a little bit more and help support the channel financially, you can click the thanks button down below and leave a tip in the amount that you want. Also, you can visit my merch shelf, which is displayed below the description, and purchase a t-shirt, plans for building a guitar, or plans for building the tools that we use to build guitars. Now back to the video. The body blank is now ready to be cut on the CNC machine. Now, as far as the other woods that I'm using on this guitar, for the fretboard, I'm using this nice piece of flamed maple. It's 1/4 inch thick, 3.5 inches wide, and 22 inches in length. And then for the neck, I'm using another piece of flamed maple, which is 1 inch thick, 4 inches wide, and 27 inches long. So in the next several episodes, I'm going to begin cutting these pieces on the CNC machine. I'll start with the fretboard, continue with the neck, and then finish with the body. And once that's done, I'll be able to bring the pieces together, do some finish sanding, apply the finish, and then from that point, I can start doing the final assembly. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We still got a lot of work to do with respect to cutting the parts on the CNC machine. So until the next episode, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.